Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tackling a concept that is, honestly, a total game changer for measuring corporate performance. We're going way beyond those surface-level numbers to uncover what actually drives a company's true value creation. To kick things off, I want to pose a really fundamental question to you. Is a profitable company always creating value? Now, I know what you might be thinking. Most of us, even seasoned pros, would instantly just say, well, yeah, of course. We're so conditioned to look at the bottom line on an income statement, right? If it's in the black, we celebrate. But what if I told you that bottom line accounting profit kind of lies to you? It just doesn't tell the whole story of a business's success. Let's think about a quick mini scenario here. Imagine a company reports, say, $1 million in accounting profit. Looking good on paper, right? But let's zoom out for a second. What if the investors who put up the money for this business required $1 million return just to justify the risk they took? Well, if we actually account for that required return, the true value created by that company is literally zero. Sure, they survived the year, but they didn't create a single penny of new value. So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with number 1, the illusion of profit. Then 2, value-based management defined. 3, the residual income formula. 4, a step-by-step calculation. And finally, 5, interpreting the results. All right, Section 1, the illusion of profit, and why accounting profit is limited. You see, traditional accounting profit has a massive blind spot. It completely ignores the return required by the folks who actually provided the capital. Under standard accounting rules, you deduct the cost of debt, your interest expense. But equity capital? It gets treated like it's totally free. And as anyone in business knows, equity capital is absolutely never free. Which brings us right into Section 2, value-based management defined. Value-based management, or VBM for short, is basically the direct response to that massive accounting blind spot we just talked about. It explicitly addresses that missing piece, the return required by the providers of capital. Think about it. A short-term obsession with pure accounting profit can lead managers to make some pretty dysfunctional decisions, like slashing crucial value-building investments just to artificially puff up this quarter's income statement. VBM fixes that exact problem. Moving on to Section 3. The residual income formula. Here is the formula, and it's beautifully simple. Residual income equals operating income minus the target return on invested capital. Basically, we take the money generated from operations, and we just subtract the baseline return that investors expect based on the capital tied up in the business. Let's deconstruct these formula components so we really get what's going on under the hood. First up is operating income, which is easy enough. You just pull that straight from the income statement. But then we have the target return, and that requires 2 things, average invested capital and the imputed interest rate. Now that term, imputed interest rate, that's the one to really zero in on. It sounds fancy, but it simply means the required rate of return for the entity. It's the hurdle rate. It is exactly what the capital providers demand for taking on the risk of funding the business. So, to get that target return, you multiply the average invested capital by that imputed interest rate. And I really want to put a massive emphasis on the word average here. Because a company's asset base is always fluctuating throughout the year, you can't just lazily grab the end-of-year capital figure. No, you absolutely must find the average invested capital for the entire period to calculate an accurate target return. All right, let's see how this plays out in Section 4, our step-by-step calculation. We're going to apply this to a textbook sample firm to see the math in action. For the year that just ended, this firm generated $100,000 in sales, with operating expenses sitting at $58,000. Their invested capital at the end of the prior year was $600,000, and their current invested capital is $800,000. Finally, their capital has an imputed interest rate of 5.5%. Okay, let's walk through this sequentially together. Step 1, we find the operating income. That's our sales of $100,000 minus operating expenses of $58,000, leaving us with $42,000. Now, step 2, and remember, this is the absolutely critical one, we find the average capital. We take that $800,000 current capital, add the $600,000 prior capital, and divide the whole thing by 2. That gives us an average invested capital of $700,000. On to step 3, calculating the target return. We take that $700,000 average capital, multiply it by our imputed interest rate of 5.5%, and we get $38,500. And finally, step 4, we calculate the residual income. We just take our operating income from step 1, which was $42,000, and subtract that target return from step 3, $38,500, which leaves us with a final figure of $3,500. And guys, this right here, this is the massive aha moment. Contrast this $3,500 with the $42,000 operating income we found back in step 1. If you only ever looked at the accounting profit, you'd be high-fiving over making 42 grand. But when we actually account for the 5.5% return that investors absolutely demand on the $700,000 tied up in the business, the real profit, the true economic value added, is a much, much more modest $3,500.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 5, interpreting the results.
The fundamental meaning of all this math is perfectly captured in a core quote straight from our source material. A firm earns a real profit only after it has repaid the cost of capital. Because our residual income in this example is a positive $3,500, it means our firm did exactly that. It covered every single operating expense, it fully repaid the 5.5% cost of capital expected by the investors, and then it went ahead and generated an additional $3,500 in pure, unadulterated value. Now, if this number had been negative, that would mean the firm was literally destroying shareholder value, even if its traditional accounting profit looked positive on paper.
Now, before you rush out to calculate this for yourself, watch out for a few common pitfalls that trip up a lot of analysts. Number 1, and we mentioned this earlier, forgetting to calculate the average invested capital. If you just lazily grab the ending capital, your target return is going to be totally skewed. Number 2 is misunderstanding the imputed interest rate. Just to be completely clear, this is not a bank loan rate. It's the required return for the entire entity. And number 3, confusing operating income with real profit. As we've clearly seen today, operating income is just a stepping stone. It is definitely not the finish line. To really master this concept, let's briefly contrast residual income with ROI, or return on investment. ROI is expressed as a percentage, whereas residual income is a hard monetary amount. And here's why that distinction really matters. If a manager is judged purely on an ROI percentage, they might actually reject a fantastic, profitable project just because it might slightly lower their overall average percentage. But with residual income, any positive monetary result guarantees increased shareholder value. You don't take percentages to the bank, right? You take actual dollars. So take a close look at the numbers in your own organization and ask yourself, are you measuring profit or are you measuring value? Relying solely on standard accounting profit is basically falling for an illusion. To see the true financial reality of any business, you've absolutely got to find the residual income. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it changes the way you look at a balance sheet forever.